Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Shift to 5G Standalone Core on Cloud, hosted by Google Cloud, Intel, and Nokia, and featuring our guest speakers from Forrester Consulting. We're glad you're joining us today. In the last few years, 5G Standalone Core on Cloud has been gaining momentum. We wanted to dive deep into the market dynamics and identify the opportunities for growth within it, particularly in the enterprise segment. To get the most reliable and comprehensive research, we engaged with Forrester Consulting to complete a survey and analysis. Today, we'll go through those results and discuss as a panel what that means for the market and its players. Let's take a minute to introduce our speakers. So on board, we've got Dan Beeler, Senior Analyst at Forrester, Hit Snake, Cloud Ecosystem Development Director at Intel, Jan Seithoff, Principal Consultant at Forrester, and Don Tercel, Head of Global Strategic Partnerships at Google Cloud. And I'm Sharon McTurnan, Head of 5G Core Campaign Marketing at Nokia. So our agenda today, we're going to start out. Dan is going to take us through the market and why it's in full transformational mode to 5G Core on Cloud. Then we're going to hand over to Jan, and he's going to show us some of the survey results that are most impactful for the market. And we'll discuss as a panel ways to take action and bring those to life. And then we'll wrap up with some recommendations from the panel across the board. At this time, I want to give Don from Google a chance to tell us a little bit about our partnership and why this survey is important for the industry.
Thanks very much, Sharon. Great to join all my panelists. Nokia and Intel and Google Cloud have been working together for a while now on market opportunities for CSPs transforming themselves, leveraging cloud technologies. As a three-way partnership, we wanted to learn more about the successes and also some of the obstacles they're facing internally on this journey, and also the benefits that they're seeing. We are constantly trying to validate our solution in terms of correctness. We're evolving both the technical roadmaps, and that input and validation is really important for us to advise our customers together and to really come out the other side with true business benefits and delivery. So very important survey for all three of us in this partnership.
Great. Jan, do you want to give us an overview of the survey and the methodology behind?
Yes, thank you, Sharon, and thank you everyone for making the time to join us. We just wanted to start with a definition of 5G Standalone Core and Cloud. So it is the core's network functions based on 3GPP 5G standards are running on cloud computing architecture. So those network functions include mobility management, session management, charging, subscriber data management, policy control, media gateway, signaling, analytics, and slice management. And the 5G Standalone Core and Cloud can be deployed on various types of clouds. And that in the survey, it was made very clear that unless otherwise specified, we're looking across private cloud or on-premises, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. So that's specifically what we are looking at and what we surveyed. Just a bit of detail about the survey, first of all. So just to reiterate, the objective was to explore the views of senior decision makers and communications service providers around the world about the drivers, challenges, and opportunities of 5G Standalone Core and Cloud. So we did an online survey. We wanted to reach 150 respondents. We actually got to 171. It was global in scope, and we really wanted to focus on the larger CSPs, so tier 1 and tier 2s. And we wanted a high level of respondents, so senior decision makers at manager level or above. And you can see there the different levels of respondents who participated. So just a bit more detail in terms of the firmographics. So as I mentioned, it's a global survey, so you can see it's a pretty even regional distribution between Asia Pacific, the Americas, and EMEA. So Americas includes North and South America. EMEA was principally Western Europe and some of the Middle East. And Asia Pacific included India, Philippines, Indonesia, and some of the other more developed countries there. We also had a relatively even breakdown in terms of the status of the CSPs networks. So as you can see, 35% were expanding or upgrading implementation. 37% had implemented and not expanding and upgrading, and 27% were planning to implement in the next 12 months. And even distribution between tier ones and tier twos, and different levels of departments as well in terms of the respondents. So that's the detail of the survey, and then I'm going to hand over to Dan.
Thank you, Jan, and welcome from my end as well. Over the next 5 to 7 minutes, I'll share some of the observations in the telecom space in terms of the overarching trends that we see there, and it underlines that the entire segment of communication service providers is really in full transformation mode. I'm Dan Bieler, and I'm an analyst at Forrester, so I'm not part of the consulting team, so I'm dealing with service providers on a daily basis, really, and I'm heavily involved in analyzing the market trends and also advising the communication service providers. Now, our key observation to start with is to look at the business objectives of organizations. And here we see that the top CSP business priorities really reflect the need for more operational flexibility, better customer experience, that's for their customers, and also to drive faster innovation. We see clearly that it's still very important for them to grow the revenue base. So new business models, new revenue streams are clearly a top priority. But interestingly, it's also issues that help them to improve and drive better customer experiences, and also their ability to innovate, for instance, having faster innovation cycles, that is very high up on their agenda. Now, behind this, we see a dynamic that is really shaping the desire to develop new value propositions. We see that there is a shift away from delivering just plain vanilla products, which means that the classic carrier product is increasingly commoditizing, which was very much on the quality of the network, maybe the pricing of the network, that increasingly the carrier customers are really now paying attention to the service component as well, where it is about delivering centralized management of the network, where it's about the control and analysis of the network, where it's about cloud-based solutions, service assurance, and open network APIs type of situations. And further into the future, we also see a much greater demand for having better experiences when you're using the network. So that could be, for instance, faster provisioning cycles, self-service portals, and also the possibility for on-demand configuration and to visualize the network-wide resources. If we move on in our discussions and observations of the carrier world, we see that the top network infrastructure priorities reflect the increasing demand by the carrier customers for differentiated connectivity, because different use cases really require different types of connectivity. And this is reflected in the kind of solutions that we see in the sense of technologies, architectures. And this means that, for instance, the notion of having network on as a service type of cloud version is very important, that business-wide networking fabrics become very important, that in general, the whole role of software, of virtualization, of automation is becoming much more important. This is a trend that has been going on for some time, but we see a definite increase in the speed with which carrier customers are requiring these kind of solutions in order to drive the differentiated connectivity. Now, 5G core on cloud helps the carriers to deliver a much more scalable infrastructure, a much more flexible infrastructure, and also provides them with more agility. Why? Because we see that there is a chance now to reduce the need for having the direct ownership of infrastructure. Here we are talking about a much more integrated approach to hardware, software, and the service components. It's less complex and also a faster deployment cycle that we are looking at here. And then there's, of course, the option for managed and orchestrated approach to developing the solutions. The solution is also better positioned to scale up and to scale down in terms of the infrastructure that is underlying the overall solution. And we see the demand for and the emergence of more flexible payment models, subscription models, on-demand type of payment models, as well as the financial component of having a greater efficiency of the network overall. And the security component of 5G should not be underestimated as well. Overall, what we also see from a talent perspective is that there is a real interest in using these kind of solutions that are hosted, managed from a talent perspective, because you gain access to talent more easily. Now, this new type of network architecture is also helping the carriers to go through their own fundamental transformation activities. And we see that the dynamic connectivity infrastructure really helps the carriers to address the main transformation ask that they are facing. In particular, the shift from the traditional focus on tariff centricity towards focusing much more on customer pain points, so taking on a human-centric approach to designing the solutions, a shift from technology centricity to really designing the relevant solutions for the client base, for the enterprise client base, less focus on the connectivity itself and focusing on the service and the experience component. Also a shift away from the pure product to developing more the processes and also the business outcomes for their customers. And also from a go-to-market perspective, we see a shift away from the classic sell-to and sell-through go-to-market approach to much greater emphasis on the ecosystem play and also the self-service component. And then lastly, we see that the carriers are really trying to simplify their offerings by moving more and more towards modular offerings and standardized offerings. All of this, of course, is very important for them because this helps to drive data-generated insights, and they are important to deliver more business-oriented outcomes for the carrier customers. Now, the carrier tasks essentially also reflect the need for an accelerated approach to rolling out the dynamic network infrastructure. It reflects the need for more agile ways of working, for the network orchestration component, and also a different approach to the architecture design, as well as the need to work more together with partners to overcome the skill challenges that we see out there, but also to develop very sector-specific ecosystems that address particular business requirements for enterprise customers in particular sectors. And in addition, what we see is that there is a shift towards a more collaborative culture, a more agile mindset, a willingness to experiment more, and also the operating model is beginning to change in the direction of allowing carriers to really address different types of business models. And therefore, the key steps that we believe that carriers should consider when they are moving towards a more dynamic network infrastructure is in terms of value propositions, that they need to really translate the benefits that the connectivity can deliver to the business outcomes that the connectivity can provide for the enterprise customers. In terms of the offering focus, we believe it's key that they underline the support that these solutions can bring to cloud installations, so moving into the cloud, but also moving between different cloud environments to support the more flexible networking infrastructure overall, but also to provide the base for more agile interconnection for connected solutions, for instance. And then in terms of the go-to-market approach, we believe carriers really need to talk the language of the target stakeholders. The target stakeholders will very often be not the ones in the network infrastructure division. It might well also include target stakeholders, customers from marketing, from product development. And therefore, there's also a need to think about and provide different options for pricing models. And last but not least, from an innovation perspective, we see carriers very actively engaging in building and joining different partner ecosystems that really involve a very broad range of players and members. Plus, we do see that there is an increasing willingness to embrace agile, iterative forms of innovation, open innovation, where you take on the ongoing customer feedback. And with this, I hand over back to you, Sharon.
Great, thank you for that overview. Jan, I think it's time to take a look at some of the survey results. If you want to kick us off, I think the first one is on use cases.
That's right. Yep. So here we see the results to the question: what do you expect will be the key use cases that 5G standalone core and cloud enables? So we can see that industrial and utilities were ranked the highest, but I think it's also fair to say that it's a pretty even distribution. So it's a broad range of different use cases. And we also saw that the key capabilities that CSPs highlight in terms of 5G are the IoT capabilities, the high speed capability, and the reliability. And I think it's a lot of those three factors that are incorporated into some of those use cases.
Great. I know from the Nokia side, our customers are really interested in creating mobile experiences for both the enterprise and the consumer side. Early on, we've seen a lot of consumer use cases taking off, and these are specifically around kind of the cloud gaming and the virtual reality driven areas. There is a lot of regional differences here as well, depending upon the device availability and just the interest level in different countries around gaming. Where we do expect to see the biggest growth going forward is with the industrial use cases. And this is going to be driven by some of the SA-specific enhancements, such as slicing, low latency, and automation that are only available with the standalone core. So slicing is really going to let enterprises tailor their network to their specific needs in terms of throughput and latency, so they can really get the most out of what they need. And then the low latency and automation is going to enable some new use cases around robotics, which is going to open up some market segments, including manufacturing, construction, utilities, mining, many others as well. What's really going to need to happen for this to take off is a use case that's scalable and repeatable. So CSPs are going to need something that they can deploy on a wider scale. So that's kind of what we see around use cases. Jan, what's the next topic we want to go take a look at? Benefits, I believe.
Right. Yep. So just going to talk through the next couple of slides. So we asked, how important is or will your organization's 5G standalone core and cloud implementation be in achieving the following business objectives? And you can see a number of them related to brand and customers, such as the first one, the third one, the fourth one. But really the key one we think is the accelerating the responsiveness, being more agile, being able to respond to market changes more quickly. And also on the resilience side, the operational resilience is also very important. We also asked what some of the key internal benefits are for the CSPs, and they highlighted increased security and increased efficiency internally. And that really comes down to the resilience of the network.
But Dan, do you have anything to add to that, or anybody from the panel?
Well, I can comment, Sharon, on the ability to deliver agility in a cloud-based solution. I think we've been working with our software partners and network function providers and Intel on the automation side, on the scale side, on recovery side. So the ability to respond to change really helps launch new products, create differentiation in the market, creates business resiliency. And relying on that partnership approach has really helped our CSP customers start to achieve some of their agility goals.
Yeah, what we also see is that the separation of the network components means that you no longer, or the carriers no longer depend on this purpose-built hardware equipment, and there's now therefore this opportunity to shift towards the virtualized network functions. And the shift from the physical to the virtual machines and now to the cloud-native platforms means that for the carriers, there is an opportunity to drive greater agility in how they think about developing new solutions based on their network architecture. And the containerization and also microservices will therefore play a much bigger role for the carriers than they would have done in the past. And the faster deployment of network services also means that they are therefore in a better position to react quite quickly to these constantly and changing customer expectations that we see out there from the enterprise side, and of course also on the consumer side. And for instance, the ability to scale the network up and down more easily is one simple example where this new kind of infrastructure really helps to address the carrier requirements to meet the customer expectations.
I think maybe just to add, as we go through this transformation, it is kind of easy to just assume that some of the operational efficiency is really just about porting IT tools and best practices to compute infrastructure. But as we've seen from the learning that this can be, at a cost of some of the KPIs around these areas for telcos. So you do need to, maintain the workload performance and, have some of the telco specific efficiencies. And I think that's where the kind of ecosystem comes together. And, it means kind of exposure of these to ensure that the speed to market with these new operational tools is much faster and easier. And these are some of the things that, we've kind of looked at from a silicon perspective, and how do you address some of these KPIs just beyond performance. And when you kind of have this highly optimized software tuned to hardware, and then, working with partners like, Google and, Nokia to look at areas around power management, I think that's where some of these results can be kind of exponential. And I think that's where some of these benefits come to bear in these areas. It's a lot of hard work that's being done by a lot of the partners to, bubble up these areas in this open environment.
Great. Jan, do you want to take us forward to the next topic?
So that's kind of, we're highlighting two key benefits, right? So again, the agility, the flexibility, and the resilience. But we also found very important was in terms of new monetization and new business models. So you can see here that that there's a lot of interest. Well, the question is, in which ways is your organization monetizing or planning to monetize 5G standalone core and cloud? And the most popular was to expose network functions to application providers using the network exposure functions APIs. And the second most important one was to provide network as code offerings where the entire network and operations are exposed via APIs. So new business models, and again, those kinds of ways of monetizing are very much, around working with application providers and customers and integrating more closely with them.
So any comments from the panel on this?
Yeah, what we do see also is that, of course, if you look at the carrier opportunities, the new business opportunities, they relate clearly to dynamics like developing, installing, designing IoT networks from the carrier end, but also helping to deliver new connected solutions. But in terms of the opportunities, we also need to look at the key features that 5G brings. So much higher bandwidth, much lower latency, better security, and so on. So that dynamics like network slicing, the possibility to use network slicing or offering network as a service based on these slicing options, really allows the carriers to deliver customized connectivity. And therefore, they're moving into new directions. And then they are also in a position to really develop new types of business models where we are talking about embedded connectivity, wrapping connectivity around software, or wrapping connectivity around products. Think of a connected car, for instance, or a software solution that has the connectivity that you need to to use the application already in the price. And therefore, we see a much greater emphasis also on API factories, where you can think about developing these new business models together with a lot of partners. And then from a carrier enterprise customer perspective, we see a real interest in the 5G development around private 5G, indoor coverage, using 5G in a rural context, and the 5G features that are absolutely essential. So latency, bandwidth, massive IoT criteria, they are currently really at the center of the use cases that we're seeing. So self-driving vehicles, quality inspection via high-definition cameras, mobile robotics, smart factories, smart mining. These are all good examples of where 5G can really deliver a completely different use case than what we have seen in the past. Yes, it's in many respects early days. We are seeing lots of tests, trials, and pilots, but we believe very strongly that 5G is moving in the direction of becoming a general purpose technology. Also, that the carriers will definitely have to manage legacy environments for many years to come.
I was going to say, after Dan's very good comments, that if you look at a lot of these capabilities here, some of them are new. So the top two are very new. The others are capabilities that CSPs have always been looking for to drive down the level of complexity, increasing automation and the leverage of data and analytics to make sure their networks are performing and ready for these new types of services. So this set of thinking, if you will, across the different capabilities is really an important way. And it looks like we're glad to see that CSPs are looking at monetization and planning for it, because that's the way they're going to continue to invest in their networks.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on this topic? Or all right, Jan, why don't you take us to the next?
Yep. So lots of interesting opportunities, but there are also a number of challenges that we wanted to explore and ask the CSPs about. So on the left, we asked them about non-technical areas inhibiting the growth of the 5G standalone core and cloud service adoption. So you can see quality control and SLA issues was the top one, and lack of leadership buy-in. And then on the right, we also wanted to explore the technical areas that are inhibiting growth. With business-wide networking fabric, so that's really talking about the complexity of hardware, software, different layers that have to interconnect. And then also we highlighted some of the gaps, perhaps some maturity gaps in some areas. Some readiness of the public cloud is perceived to be an inhibitor, and also some operational aspects. So we've summarized these into three areas. So complexity, leadership buy-in. So I think there are some concerns about ROI from some leaders, and the business case. And then thirdly, just some market gaps, such as some maturity gaps, such as the orchestration tools, and some operational aspects.
Maybe if I can add something here, some observations from the enterprise perspective. If we think about IoT solutions in the industrial context, what we often hear from CTOs, CIOs that are responsible for driving 5G in the enterprise context is that a lot of the industrial machines, and it doesn't have to be manufacturing, for instance, only, it could also be machinery in a context of transport and logistics and so on. These machines actually have very long lifetimes and life cycles, and quite a few of them are very difficult to retrofit with 5G sensors. So this is a clear challenge that needs to be addressed. And secondly, we see that there is a multi-vendor environment that is emerging, and the integration of virtual network functions therefore becomes a challenge in this kind of context, in particular in the RAN domain, where we have several network layers, and the equipment of different vendors finds it quite often hard to communicate across these different layers unless they really understand each other. And so there are several initiatives, and ORAN is just one of them that helps to support open interfaces to facilitate the communication between these different vendor solutions. But clearly something is beginning to happen to ensure that the interoperability and integration components of multi-vendor environments are being addressed. Also, Nephew is a very interesting dynamic and initiative that is addressing these kind of challenges.
On the right-hand side, as a partnership now for almost 3 years, when we started this journey together on Intel infrastructure, Dan, Nephew is a straight outcome out of our desire to expose more cloud-native orchestration to the CSPs and get it embraced in the marketplace. For those that don't know, Nephew, it's an open standard for using cloud-based orchestration capabilities for network functions and other types of scenarios. And then where we've taken the skills gap around operations and managing infrastructure, we've worked together to make sure that how you operate virtual and cloud-based network functions on top of a cloud is a seamless experience for our CSP customers, built on an infrastructure that's by default got zero trust. And I think some of the technical inhibitors are a knowledge gap that we're continually closing with regulators and our customers. And then as we start to see more successes, the upward motion of success will get better leadership buy-in, and we can have that whole solution lifecycle be an engine that's going to drive growth for our CSP customers together.
I think Don touched on some great points there, and I think maybe just to kind of unpack that area a little bit more is, I think some of the reservations which come along here are probably from, when you look at cloud native, it obviously offers much more flexibility, efficiency, and control. But I think if you kind of peel the onion a little bit and look at some of the survey results, I think what folks are looking at is in terms of the quality and TCO aspects around it. And I think the collaboration that we've kind of worked around is to try and address, 3 or 4 areas which I think are top of mind for folks as they look at those areas. So I think when you look at performance, sometimes there's in a cloud environment, there's a 3 or 4 level increase in latency when the control plane and microservices, overhead comes in. But, that's something that, we're kind of working together and addressing. Security, there could be larger attack surfaces and potential vulnerabilities in those distributed user and control planes. There's, even looking at some of the sensitivity around sustainability and carbon footprint and some of the power costs around there. So I think, bringing this together in terms of, looking at these complexities, sharing that knowledge with, some of the senior leaders as well of how the industry and the ecosystem is putting these pieces together, because all of these new breakthrough environments take time to get that mainstream adoption. And I think that we're well down that road of getting the some of these actually doubts over to the leadership to try and show them that the progress that we've all made within these areas.
And just one other thing that was interesting was that for those CSPs that have implemented, their concerns around complexity and maturity gaps was significantly lower. So that shows that implementing, going through the learning, and then these challenges can be overcome.
And one of the ways that we realized how to overcome the challenges is to really develop out that ecosystem and the partnerships across the board. So moving on to the next topic is really about the ecosystem and how that plays a role here to really get over the critical problems.
Yeah, so when we asked what is leading to your dissatisfaction with your organization's current 5G standalone core and cloud skills and capabilities, it's really highlighting some specific skills gaps, and also some partnership gaps, and some tools gaps. And I think this really just highlights the importance of partnerships and filling in those skills gaps, working in terms of the tools provision, and other partners as well, to really address some of these issues.
Maybe I can add some observations here as well. From an ecosystems and partnership perspective, I think that there are two areas that are worth looking at. There is the network provisioning part, where we see that the traditional full stack value proposition is gradually coming to an end, and we see that the virtualization of the network infrastructure context therefore opens up the door to many more vendors, vendors from different backgrounds, software, hardware, all sorts of IT services that contribute to the emerging value propositions that arise for the network infrastructure backed offerings, connectivity solutions, IoT type of solutions, and so on. And not surprisingly, therefore, the vendor landscape that we are observing is becoming more complex and also logically more multi-vendor based. And the types of players means there's more competition, but also more innovation. And from an enterprise perspective, the enterprise demand perspective, we see more and more partnerships and ecosystems between the enterprise customers, the carriers, and many of the other players that are just hinted at. They come together to develop the best connected solutions for often very sector-specific and process-specific solutions and activities. An example would be the 5G AA in the automotive space, the 5G ACIA for the manufacturing space, and there's also the 5G Health Association. So there are a couple of very interesting examples where partners from very different backgrounds come together to form new types of ecosystems, and the carriers, hyperscalers, software players, they're all part of it.
I think one thing that Google Cloud is, we've been bringing cloud native to the market now for a number of long time. This is my 6th year at Google Cloud, and a lot of the IT transformation learnings now are also very valuable for the network side. The cloud transformation, if you will, has been going on in other parts of the organization for a very long time. So it's a chance for other people in the organization to participate in the network journey, to bring some of their existing brethren that have focused on purpose-built systems, help those people develop new skills. A lot of this journey, if you will, has been tackled in other areas of the CSP. And now that we have partnerships and growth in the market of skills and an ecosystem to address these, together with the IT side of some of these CSPs, I think this whole picture is getting much better over time, and around helping them focus on their core competencies and relieving some of the burden they've had traditionally on managing infrastructure is helping them go and develop these new skills internally.
I think the value of the ecosystem was really highlighted as we worked with all of the carriers around the transition to network function virtualization, right? I mean, that was there are some tremendous learnings that we got kind of working with the ecosystem around hardening the platform, investing in the software areas, and looking at how you can create the maturity in some of the processes and the engagement models. I think these are some of the learnings that you can actually look at, optimizing some of the TCO levels and meeting some of these telco metrics within this, cloud area as well. And I think that these benefits, can come across with that consistency that we can drive across these different, infrastructure. When carriers struggle with this transition, and I think some of the research kind of highlights that they're looking for this new market access for monetization and operational efficiency, but they still need to meet some of the regulatory requirements and critical telco metrics, right? So I think that's where the ecosystem is stepping up to help address some of these different areas. And we have some great examples, working with Nokia around 5G power core savings and some collaborations we announced at MWC this year. And Intel and Google have worked together to kind of closely optimize the Google distributed edge, performance and drive scale within those areas. So these are just some of the examples that really help in terms of, where the ecosystem comes together, and tangible ones where we can drive that, joint success to give sort of carriers the peace of mind that they, the skills gap in some of these areas are kind of, dealt with by the ecosystem who are stepping up to deliver these, opportunities and solutions.
What I also found quite interesting is the emphasis on skills here that are clearly a challenge, and ecosystems are very helpful to plug the skill gaps that you have, because some of your partners might well have these skills that you need to develop particular solutions. So I wouldn't underestimate the importance of ecosystems for plugging skill gaps.
That's a great point, Dan. Absolutely.
And just continuing on the topic of partnerships and ecosystems. So we also asked, to overcome challenges with 5G standalone core and cloud, what steps does your organization plan to take to ramp up quality cloud network offerings? So you can see the top answers here. So consume core and cloud as a network as a service, or software as a service offering for internal use, partnering with professional services organizations, increasing focus on key customer segments, and as Dan mentioned, there's a number of 5G vertical initiatives to really address that, and also consuming core and cloud as a network as a service or software as a service offering to sell to other enterprises. Again, that's working around partnerships. So yeah, just highlighting the importance of partnerships and ecosystems.
One thing that we noticed around network as a service or as a SaaS offering for connectivity, it's very market specific sometimes, where there are CSPs who have traditionally outsourced a lot of their network to a third party. They still want that level of service from a partnership or an ecosystem. And so working together with Nokia and Intel on solidifying the solution so it can be adopted as a service is one of our objectives. From they're used to just adopting a network from a third party, are still looking for that level of service model and operational support.
Okay. I think it's important to note too that the use of ecosystems really does increase the amount of choices that the operators have to go to market. So they can really tailor their go-to-market needs with what they're going to need. So they can choose their partnerships on their own. And it really just gives a lot more choices for them to get what they need. We can take a look at the recommendations now.
Yep. So this is a graphic that we put together trying to summarize everything that we've discussed. So highlighting the three key benefit areas: increased agility, new business models, and improved resilience. And we see those aspects both internally for the CSPs and externally. So working with partners to help on the technical side, let's say on the deployment side, perhaps, and then working with industry groups and customers and application providers on the go-to-market side. And yeah, you can see different technical partnerships, go-to-market partnerships, and really helping those three benefit areas. And yeah, just to talk a little bit more about the resilience side of things. So that's including a more secure network, a more sustainable network, as was discussed, a more stable, easier to upgrade, and more responsive. So just kind of bringing everything together.
So one comment I had was around the other aspect of ecosystem, which is on the go-to-market side. I think it's an important aspect where the ecosystem that we've offered in around go-to-market helps CSPs discover new use cases. We've got validated solutions that we worked in Nokia on Intel infrastructure, and we also have sales engagement with the CSP to help take those solutions to market, help them build that model and those processes. And since we're selling to enterprise as well, some of that can even be done in a co-sell manner. So the concept of ecosystem is not just on the technology partnership and easing that whole implementation of a network. The ecosystem can also help a CSP build the best practices and capabilities to take solutions to market as well.
I think one of the other aspects is around looking at these go-to-market partnerships as really being a channel which drive business for the telco. I mean, it creates a tremendous pull because today the buyers or the people looking at solutions at the end customers are across the organization, and whether the ISVs touch those people, whether the OS folks touch those people, a lot of different folks touch those people in terms of evangelizing what the use case is. And all of these, by engaging with them in campaigns, engaging with them on a go-to-market co-sell partnership, really creates a pull on bringing those business opportunities back into the CSP. So I think that's really valuable. Great point from Don in terms of not just looking at an ecosystem from a technical partnership, but get to market as well as a go-to-market aspect of driving that joint value proposition for all.
I think leveraging it as a channel, Hitendra, as you said, is the whole key. You can build a new channel, and that's how you monetize, by relying on the ecosystem. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we will just go to the key recommendations. So we've got summarizing 5 key recommendations. First of all, accelerate 5G standalone core and cloud deployment and rollout. Secondly, align application and process design, agile, GitOps ways of working, network orchestration, operations and technology architecture design. Thirdly, partnerships help to overcome technology and skill challenges and pursue business opportunities, as we've seen in some detail. And then transform towards a more agile, experimental and collaborative culture and operating model. And then finally, increase focus on building stronger sector-specific ecosystems also, as we've discussed.
I think what is important as part of these recommendations to realize is that we're talking about a fairly complex undertaking. It's not something that represents or reflects a traditional technology rollout. This is a process where, yes, of course, the technology does matter enormously, and it opens up completely new possibilities. And it's definitely very helpful to work together with partners as part of these ecosystems that we just discussed. But equally important is to think about the operational structures that you put in place to manage, for instance, a much more agile approach to operating and maintaining and planning your network infrastructure. And then last but not least, we also believe that this requires really a cultural transformation on the carrier side and probably as well on the enterprise customer side, because if you have a network that is much more software defined, much more virtual in nature, you are beginning to really think about a different kind of approach to designing the technology that you're using. It has ramifications on the skills, the talent management, therefore will be impacted. It has ramifications on the operating culture of your business as processes, for instance, innovation processes become faster, product innovation processes. And it also has a big impact on how you need to think about developing new products and value propositions along the lines of pushing the service component, the experience component, embracing human-centric design, capabilities. And all of these different dynamics coming together means that the carriers really need to approach the introduction of 5G standalone core and cloud as a broader project. It's not just a technology project.
Yes, Dan, that's a great point, particularly when you are working with a CSP that's trying to monetize. It is thinking about a different type of business model. And so a lot of this recommendations around the stack and capabilities to enable that business model. But if I was to summarize it in one single bullet of where to start, I think an internal assessment is very important to understand what gaps you do have, so that you can come out the other side understanding how an ecosystem can address some of those gaps. We as an ecosystem between the three of us with others around the application space are allowing CSPs to do just that. We have models to do their internal assessments, and even down to financial models that see some of the benefits of working together with Nokia, Google, and Intel on delivering on their new business models. It's no longer about keeping the lights on and changing your network for change's sake. It's a new way of thinking, as you said earlier, and we really believe that partnerships can help address those gaps on both the technology and cultural side, and really come out the other side with that new foundation in place.
I think from our side, I think it's great to kind of talk about one key area where you can engage. And by the way, this was a great project to be involved. I mean, I think all the folks who provided the insights here, you know, the opportunity to gather insights and data and information on customer needs and trends, that kind of keeps us all on our toes to try and help the industry. And I think the one area maybe that I think the North Star for the CSPs is to really focus on how can you have that agility to tap into those new business use cases and you know, new business revenue streams that you can tap into. And I think if you keep your eye on that, you know, look at how the ecosystem can, you know, the trust in the ecosystem to, you know, bring all of the aspects together to help you form that agility to tap into those use cases. I think 5G opens up a wealth of areas that they can actually grow their business tremendously and, you know, move into a space where, you know, it can exponentially drive revenue streams for them. So I think, you know, keeping your eye on that North Star of maintaining that agility and, you know, harnessing the ecosystem and all of the partners around it is really something that, you know, all the rest of the things can fall into place to kind of get you there. So, you know, excellent to kind of participate and be involved in these areas with them.
Great. I think the one thing that I'd like people to lead with about 5G SA Core on Cloud is the word versatility. So, you know, as you deploy this, there's versatility in your hardware, and whether you want a public or private cloud, whether you want network software, partners. So really, you have a lot of choices on how you want to go to market. And these choices can really allow you to become more customer-centric rather than infrastructure-focused, which is traditional implementations do. So this customer-centric and customer-focused go-to-market model really can help you speed that time to market and improve some of the customer experience across the board. On behalf of our panel here today, we'd like to thank you for joining us on this discussion about 5G standalone core on cloud. We covered a lot of ground looking at the enterprise market and their adoption potential. We've looked at, you know, some use cases, some benefits, some challenges, some go-to-market strategies, as well as some technical capabilities that'll be enhanced. So we hope you gained something from our session today. Thanks for joining, and we'll hope to see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.